Yeah, that's right, Ben. And today, the state's allocation subcommittee of the Vaccine Advisory Board did meet to discuss who will be next, eligibility-wise, to receive the vaccine. The state's COVID-19 vaccine allocation subcommittee met to discuss who should be at the front of the line.
The 1B group is going to take us, months.
They'll make recommendations to the governor, but he has the final say.
My inclination is to listen to them.
Phase 1B is expected to include 800,000 individuals.
It's not too many more than that because that allows us to have a somewhat manageable phase size. We think that that's something that can be accomplished in roughly 10 weeks of a vaccine rollout.
They've gotten over 100 letters with recommendations on who should be first.
Lots of materials, both from representatives of groups and definitely from individuals as well. We are reading all of those.
The subcommittee will almost certainly recommend vaccinating people 75 and older. They may push younger people with comorbidities back by a few months. Then they address the essential workforce and may recommend vaccinating people in congregate settings like prisons or group homes, first responders, public safety workers, transportation workers, teachers and staff, manufacturing workers, and food and agricultural workers, including both grocery store and restaurant workers. Stand by.
Not fully set up yet, are they sure?
All right, and the allocation subcommittee also noted that there will be a phase 1C. That will be followed by phase 2. There is still more work to be done, of course, to clearly identify and define who would be eligible within these many different broad categories. We're live in Hartford. Matt Caron, Fox 61 News.